morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 27th of September meeting of the Powys County Council Governance and Audit Committee. Okay, is there some background noise, Kath? Right, hopefully we can carry on. The first thing I would like to do is to welcome Councillor Bev to her first meeting of Governance and Audit Committee. Councillor Bev became a member of this committee a couple of months ago, and this is her first meeting. So welcome, Councillor Bev. I also need to advise the committee of apologies from Jane Thomas, the Section 151 officer, but to advise that Anne Phillips is deputising for Jane. So Anne, you're very welcome. Apologies also from Gareth Hall, from Councillor William and from Councillor Chris. And I can see that Emma has her hand up. Are you going to advise us of another apology?
Yeah, sorry, I should have said before. So it's Derwin Owen and Gareth Jones from Audit Wales.
Yeah, thanks, Emma.
Thanks.
And thanks for coming. I know Audit Wales colleagues don't have any items on the agenda, but it's important that you're here in attendance anyway. So thank you for your attendance, and we'll make a note of Gareth and Derwin's apologies. So
thanks.
Thank you very much. I'll move on to agenda item 2, which is disclosures of interest, and invite any disclosures of interest for any item to be considered during this meeting. If anyone has anything, if they could just raise their hand. No one raising any hands, so we'll move on. We'll move on to the minutes of the July meeting and turn the pages, and I will invite points of clarification, correction, or matters arising as we go through the minutes. If colleagues could please raise a hand if there is anything that they would like to draw to the committee's attention or question. I can see Councillor Peat has his hand raised.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just 2 points, if I may. Is on page 6 on the minute around the Red Dragon. I just wanted to say thank you to the officers and yourself, Chair, for that meeting. Very constructive. But just to let committee know as well that there are still a couple of outstanding points that the Section 151 officer is looking into for me. So maybe a bit of an update with that later. And then if I may, on page 9, top of page 9, the minute around the whistleblowing question. I was just seeking a bit more clarity on that response, if I could, because the minute to me sort of says that internal audit are testing the whistleblowing process, but the assurance I was seeking behind my question was really asking if internal audit could confirm that with the understandable cloak of confidentiality around whistleblowing cases, that they do indeed receive the detail, whether that's a live case or a closed case, that they actually need to reach their audit opinion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Peat. And Ian, could you just perhaps provide a bit more of a bit clarity on the answer, please, which we'll record in these minutes, if you could possibly.
Certainly, thank you, Chair. In terms of the role of internal audit, we are one of the avenues that can be used to investigate a whistleblowing complaint. There are many others. So obviously, if we investigate, we're aware. If we don't investigate, then we are not formally notified of an investigation that's ongoing, because it's there's the confidentiality around that. But at the end of the process, the Section 151 officer will make me aware of any issues that have arisen from that. And if I need to, then I can look at the detail of that. So there is a process. Probably it's more informal than formal, but there definitely is a process.
Thank you very much, Ian. Councillor Peat, is that satisfactory?
I think so, Chair. If I could just ask a little bit further though, Ian. So I guess what I was trying to drive at is you yourself as internal audit for me are giving us an opinion around the controls framework, etc., and giving us reasonable assurance around that. Are you happy that you get to know enough about these, and albeit rare cases, but you get to know enough about those cases to enable you to be fully satisfied that you can pass an opinion on that?
I think the simple answer to that is yes. I'm, in terms of the whistleblowing complaints of the past, I've been made aware of them. Yeah, they have been after the event in some of these cases, but in terms of my knowledge and my questioning, yes, I am happy.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks both. Thank you very much. Anything else on the minutes from anyone? I've just got one item on the strategic risk register. Colleagues may remember on our discussion of the strategic risk register in July that Councillor Graham asked about the scoring of the adult social care risk, and I took an action to ask Councillor Amanda, who chairs the scrutiny committee, really to seek assurance on behalf of our committee that Health and Care Committee were also thoroughly scrutinising matters around adult social care. I've received a very helpful reply from Councillor Amanda, which I'm just going to read to the committee to go on the record. Health and Care Scrutiny Committee have scrutinised, been updated on and are aware of pressures on WCCIS, domiciliary care packages and the level of workforce within social services. Going forward, the committee have organised to attend user forums as well as some visits and will be able to understand the service user perspective from doing so. They do look at monthly performance reports regularly. However, one improvement they are implementing is, and this is an improvement that the scrutiny committee is implementing, is that the committee will all look at the service performance report individually. They'll submit questions to the service, and then at the following scrutiny committee, the service area will provide answers and report back. So from my perspective, I think that demonstrates to us that the scrutiny committee is on the case and is operating in this space as I would hope they were. But I would welcome comments from any committee members, and particularly Councillor Graham, because it was you who queried the residual risk scoring at our last meeting, Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm more than happy with the response, but I do feel that we still do need to look at the scoring that's taken place there, because it certainly doesn't reflect what Councillor Amanda is saying there, or what we feel as councillors. Okay,
Councillor Graham. I think the best way forward probably with this is to ask Bets as the overarching hand on risk management to take that away for us and ask senior officers to consider the scoring as they conduct their ongoing strategic risk reviews and updating. Rather than talk about it now, I think we'll just ask Bets to take that one away and discuss with senior colleagues the scoring and just to test out the scoring a wee bit in light of our discussions on Councillor Graham's point. Thank you. Thanks very much. Anything else on the minutes? If not, are you satisfied? Is everyone, committee members, content for me to sign the minutes as an accurate record of our last meeting? Could I have a show of hands, please, from members? Thank you. Right, thank you very much. Moving on through the agenda. We are on agenda item 4, which is the Q1 report from Bets on the strategic risk register. So just bearing in mind, everyone, we are already at the end of just about the end of Q2, but this update is an update to the end of July. no, up to the end of June. End of June. Yeah, quarter one, end of June. So Bets, if you could just briefly introduce your paper. Don't feel that you need to read it. We need to work on the assumption that everyone has read the papers, and then we'll invite questions from committee members. Bets.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's the Strategic Risk Register report for quarter one, which, as our Chair's just said, so that covers April, May, and June. It went immediately, as always, to SLT, so please rest assured the data does go straight away. It was just delayed coming here due to the summer break. So the purpose of the report, as it says at the start of the report, is to set out the Council's quarter one position on managing its key risks contained in the Strategic Risk Register, which is key to safeguarding the organisation and building resilience to our services. So as the Chair has mentioned, I'm taking it as read that you've all had time to read the report, so I'll just mention a few points. As at the end of quarter one, there are 14 risks on the Strategic Risk Register. Further details on the progress against each of these risks and their controls, which are also known as mitigation, can be found in Appendix A. Appendix B presents the results of quarter's risk assessment process visually. And as you can see from the visual graph, about 8 of the residual risks, so risks as of today, are sitting in the upper right quadrant of the heat map. Planning and Regulatory Services would like to escalate a risk, the risk reference PPP 0014, which relates to phosphates. Currently, it's rated as a 15 with controls listed under section 3.5 in the paper, as well as the reasoning for the escalation. That is the only risk we are proposing to escalate today, and there are no other recommendations. So therefore, Chair, I will conclude with just pointing out that the recommendation can be read in full under point 10. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bets. Thank you. I'll invite questions and comments from the floor, and I can see that Councillor Peat has got his hand up. So I'll go to Councillor Peat first, and if members could show their hand if they want to raise anything.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to flag a potentially new risk, if I may. It's just recently been brought to my attention that on the single transferable vote consultation process, that you can indeed input answers to that consultation on multiple times. So I was interested whether that is true or not. B, what controls there are around that process, and then more importantly, C, we have a full council meeting next Thursday to discuss single transferable votes, where that consultation with the public will form an integral part of that. So the question was around the integrity of that data. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Peat. Are any of the officers? Oh, Catherine, could you take that question, please?
Yes. So yeah, as you say, on the Have Your Say webpage, people can go on there to submit their responses to any consultation that we have on go. So we don't ask for specific email addresses and things. So there is that potential ability to do so. However, when the results come in, they are quality assessed and checked, and any duplicates from the same respondent are removed. There is the ability, and we have done in the past, to have email addresses put on there. However, we find it actually kind of puts people off responding to things. And it deters responses. And actually, an individual can have more than one email address, because many people do have more than one email, depending on, you know, their different roles in different organisations. So I can assure you that we do have that quality check with the data and the consultations that we do as a council. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Catherine. Pete.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Catherine. I was suppose interested there, if people aren't inputting things like email addresses, have you really got enough detail to identify duplicates, triplicates, etc., etc.? And then if so, I think personally what could be very useful, especially ahead of next week's meeting, is to actually know how many the numerics behind how many duplicates and triplicates we actually had, and we've taken out of the results, please.
Yeah. No, I have that information to hand. It's about, for that specific survey, it's about 4%. So yeah, we do know that, but that's something that we'll also be looking at. And I have actually spoken to the engagement officer, and we can also give a little bit more insight into that as well. That's not an issue.
Thank you, Catherine. I think we'll leave this topic for now. And Catherine, if you can pursue this in preparation for the full council meetings that Councillor Peat referred to. I'll go back to the current strategic risk register and invite any comments or questions from colleagues. Councillor Peat again.
Yeah, sorry, Chair.
Okay.
The only one I was sorry, just musing on slightly was the one around council tax collection, and we've just recently had a Treasury management briefing where, whilst not all doom and gloom, it wasn't exactly fantastic in talking about again the cost of living crisis, increased interest rates, and old age pensioners losing the winter fuel benefit. So I didn't know whether there was any consideration needed around raising the rating for that particular risk.
Thanks, Pete. Oh, can someone take that, or would you concede? Anne, I'll go to Anne first. Anne, you're on mute.
I don't think this does need to be escalated as a strategic risk. At the moment, yes, it's something that we pick up to our performance monitoring, and we pick up as a local risk within the service, as a service risk. We do keep a close eye, and we're putting mitigations in place. But I don't think this needs to fall at the strategic risk level.
Okay, thanks, Anne. Pete, response?
If the officer's happy with that, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I'm just looking, yeah, I can see Councillor Graham. I've got a couple of points, but I'll bring them in later after colleagues have had a chance to talk. Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm looking on strategic risk register right at the top, really, W0021, and the employment situation. I'm a little surprised to see the risk levels as low as it is. I'm aware that we have a lot of vacancies. We are openly using social media to promote the vacancies that we have. But do we have the figures at hand for how many vacancies there are on the council? And if that number is as high as I think it is, does that reflect correctly in this rating?
Are there any officers who can take that? Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think in the Q2 stats, Q1 performance stats, I think the vacancy stood at 288. I think this time last year, there were about 326. I've been in local government for quite some time now. I know that most local authorities I've worked for normally have a vacancy level of about 5 or 6%. And 288 is reasonably consistent with what I've seen for about 10 or 20 years, Councillor Breeze. So it's not unusual. Councils turnover at around about 8, 9, 10% in terms of staff coming and going. So it's not unusual to see the vacancies that we've got. We do revisit the risk every quarter, and we are satisfied it's kind of appropriately scored. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. The ones that I wanted to raise, I'm sort of slightly going back to the minutes at our last meeting. Nina, do you want to come in on that point before I move on? Sorry, Nina.
Thank you, Chair. I just noted from the minutes that a request come from the committee on an update on WCCIS. So I just wondered if you wanted me to do that now.
That was one of the ones I was gonna raise. So very timely, Nina. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Obviously, in front of you, you've got the Q1 update, but I just wanted to provide you with some up-to-date information on WCCS and the replacement for that system. The expressions of interest closed, and actually the tender process closes at the end of September. So beginning of next week, the tender process closes. We'll then be doing, obviously, evaluation of that tender. We're looking to award probably, I think, in November of this year. So that process is moving along, progressing really well. Aside from the tender work, we're obviously doing a lot of work around data cleansing to making sure the data in the current system is in a position to be moved, because that data migration to any new system is going to be really important. So I just wanted to give you assurance that that work is already happening in preparation for moving to a new system. There are weekly meetings, and we're doing work internally and also nationally as well in terms of that. In terms of Connecting Care, which is the national programme, we attend weekly SRO national meetings as well, and there's lots of other kind of work streams that we support as well and attend. So there's colleagues from social services, digital, procurement and finance, colleagues all working together on this project. And just to let you know as well that supported by Bets Ingram as well, we have re-evaluated this risk for Q2. So when it comes back to you next, you'll see this has been reworked, reworded, and we'll look forward to presenting that to you as part of the Q2 report. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Nina. That's really, really helpful, actually, because I think colleagues probably know that WCCIS is one of the things that's always on my worry list. So I'm very grateful for that update, and I am not preempting the discussion, but obviously we'll come back to WCCIS in the context of the direct payments fraud internal audit report, because WCCIS features quite heavily in there. So it's very, very helpful, Nina, to have had that update prior to agenda item 5, because there is relevance there, obviously. The other issue that was on my list for the strategic risk register is sustainable powers, and the committee had previously, and it's recorded in the July minute, the committee had previously explored that sustainable powers may merit inclusion on the strategic risk register. It's not on the strategic risk register yet, and I would just reiterate my thinking as chair of Governance and Audit Committee, that given the significance and profound strategic importance of sustainable powers to the future of service provision, engagement with the communities and the financial sustainability of the council, that I'm a wee bit surprised that there isn't a risk on there. And I do understand that there are detailed project risk registers and service risk registers. I understand that, but I think there is a strategic dimension. So I'm just going to lay that there. We don't need to discuss it, but I'm just going to reiterate the fact that from a programme delivery perspective, I remain a bit surprised. But we don't need to discuss it unless any of the officers want to discuss it today. Okay, but we can record that. Anything else on the strategic? Pete?
Sorry, Jay. Sorry, my hands are a bit cold going over the bottom, so apologies. I must turn the heating on. Must stop being Scrooge. I was just sort of thinking. I'm not sure if this is the right place, but I'll just float it to see what the answer is actually. But looking at the work we're currently doing on the sort of preferred strategy for local development plans, and just bringing it locally back to Newtown, and there's talk of potentially up to 2,000 new homes being built in Newtown. Where do we put the associated risk with that along the sides of, have we got enough schools to accommodate that? Have we got enough health GPs to accommodate that? So the infrastructure, the impact of lack or extra infrastructure around those potential houses I just didn't know where that risk sits, whether that's strategic or, as you were saying, within the projects.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Pete. Who can I go to talk to that? Matt.
Yeah, on them specific projects, it would be very specific to those operational functions. So if we are encountering issues, it would be factored in as a risk within that project and ultimately escalated it then if we couldn't control it. But yeah, it would be very much specific to that project.
Okay.
Thanks. I mean, I would assume that corporate leadership group and in terms of designing the programs of work, that those sort of cross-cutting themes would be addressed in detail as well. Matt, yeah?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much. Are colleagues happy to move on to agenda item 5? Okay, I can't see any more hands for strategic risk register, so we'll move on to the swap items. These are our internal audit items. And the first item is the direct payments proactive fraud review. I'm going to invite Ian just to introduce this very briefly, and then Ian's going to pass over to his colleague Laura Davis just to introduce the item, and then I'm going to go to Councillor Shan Cox to speak to the item as well, and then I know that Sharon and other officers will come in as well. So Ian, very brief, and then Laura, and then Councillor Shan, and then Councillor Shan.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, it's item 5 on the agenda. It's on page 58. Just I'm briefly going to pass over to Laura in a minute, but just to briefly tell you that the piece of work was around the fraud controls. But I think it's important to say that this work has expanded beyond that. I mean, and some of the issues found have much more significant implications to the care side and care delivery side. So I'll pass over to Laura. Laura's our principal fraud investigator for SWAP, and Laura will briefly run you through the key points of the audit.
Thanks,
Hi, morning everybody. Yeah, I'll just give a quick overview of the actual fraud review. As Ian has mentioned, it was started off as a proactive fraud review. It did develop into a full review, a full audit within direct payments for adult and children's services. And that was just basically to provide any assurance of the current controls and processes in place. Through the audit, we met with several departmental heads, as well as consultation staff, to understand and talk through the issues. 11 findings were found altogether, 3 for children's services and 3 for adults, with the remaining 5 findings for policy, administration and financial processes. At the time, a low limited assurance was provided for the overall audit. But I do just want to make it apparent that obviously this report was issued in July 2024. We're now talking in September. From the key conclusions that were identified, the issues were around potential decision-making around direct payments that needed to be improved. There was limited processes in place around care plan reviews being conducted on time, and then ownership of self-managed accounts, historic information, legacy information, which obviously we'll talk about on the system in a moment. But it was also identified that fraud risk training had been provided to all staff around direct payment processes. As previously mentioned in the committee, the WCCIS system has a lot to do with retrieving the live data. And obviously with the new system coming in place, this should rectify a lot of issues. But as I did mention, the report was issued in July. We are in September, and since then I have met with several people after this to discuss the findings, and a lot, if not the majority of the findings have actually been rectified, or new processes have been implemented. Therefore, if we were looking at it today, we'd be given more of a higher insurance, because obviously the findings have been actioned. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Laura. And that's really good. And it's the nature of audit that audit committees get presented with things that might not look very comforting or provide much assurance, but that's exactly what we're looking for, is to hear from those responsible that the necessary actions are being delivered. So in that context, I'll go straight to Councillor Dan, and perhaps Sharon would like to speak after Councillor Shan.
Thank you, Lynn. Can you guys hear me okay? Because my
Yes.
bandwidth's terrible today. Just put your hand up if it starts to go. So I won't speak for long. Thank you, Laura, for that introduction as well. That's also reassuring. I just wanted to come in briefly before Sharon comes in to speak to the detail. I think we've got Julia here as well to speak to the detail. So yeah, the direct payment whole system has been a subject of ongoing discussions between us, because we've had this major review and overhaul of the system ongoing for such a long time now. So it's a system, process and contract management improvements process that's been ongoing for some time. We already know that it's already created really big improvements and very increased customer satisfaction. People are finding the new system and the processes that we've put in place much easier to navigate. And we had a lot of the issues that came up, I think all of the issues actually that came up in the swap audit, we had identified them as part of the process that was underway anyway. And of course also we had the data cleansing process for the WICIS transfer to the new system underway alongside as well. So that's just a little bit of background and context, and I'll hand over to either Sharon or Julia, whichever person's going to speak to you to the detail
Thanks
of
very
our
much.
response. Thank you,
Can I come
Lynn.
in, Chair? Sharon. Just to reiterate what Councillor Shana said, there's been an ongoing programme of work since 2022, where we've done a real deep dive into the direct payment system and consultation with those who've been using it. We've now got a whole new system in place, a new provider for some of the services, and we've internalised some of the services, creating a much better oversight from the point of identification of the needs through the care and support planning, right the way through to panel agreement, how that is then transferred into the allocation of funds. And the new system allows us to actually go in and look at that at any time. It's live data, and several officers can go in and audit that. We have systems now in place identifying the requirement for audits and reviews. That is captured in our monthly performance. We have a system for raising that with team managers through the desktop data BI reports, and there is a new system for raising that with individual officers in their one-to-ones, where we capture overdue and due reviews and audits, highlighting any issues, including over underspends, any issues around establishment of PAs. So like Laura was saying, a lot of the issues have been already rectified and were well underway. Most of the things have come into place since March of this year. We don't want to replicate what Nina has said, but the issues around WICIS and our data management system, a lot of the information we have been able to retrieve through Civica and through WICIS test, but we are working with colleagues to identify any areas of risk around data and building that into our considerations for the new system moving forward.
Thank you very much, Sharon. That's very helpful context to the current situation, and the extent of your response to the issues raised in audit. And I'm sure you're in a continuous improvement space anyway, and it's not just a response to audit, but it's the way you work. Julia, do you want to add anything before I open the floor to colleagues?
Just to reiterate what Sharon's been saying, a lot of this was work underway, and we're continually looking at ways to improve and make systems robust.
Right, okay. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Councillor Sharon and Julia and Laura and Ian. I'll open the floor to questions, please, from committee members. No questions? Gosh. You must have been extremely persuasive, colleagues. I expected lots of questions on this one. I've got
I'm
one
trying
there.
to raise my hand, Lynn. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay, John, you go first then.
I've been beating the pad with my hand fist, but to no avail. Yeah, sorry. I was just wondering I'm very gratified to hear about all the work that's been going on. I'm just wondering if it'd be worthwhile for Ian to revisit with a short review, perhaps in another 3 months, 6 months or so.
I'm seeing lots of nodding. So Councillor Shan and Sharon are nodding. So that sounds like a welcome proposal. Sharon, I can see your hand is up.
I think we'd welcome the opportunity to demonstrate the work that's been going on, and we did do a briefing to Health and Care Scrutiny last Friday, giving them an update, and we've been updating Scrutiny all the way along through this programme of work. But it would be nice to actually evidence the work that's been gone in response to this audit.
Thank you very much, John. Thanks for the suggestion, and thanks to colleagues for the positivity of their response. I'm looking to Ian, but I'm kind of assuming that our agile approach to internal audit planning would enable us to accommodate this, Ian.
Absolutely, Chair. I mean, we'll track it anyway as part of our action tracking, but if for limited opinions, we will pick it up and actually go and evidence that the position that we're talking about is materializing.
Fab. Okay, thank you very much. I'll hold my questions back then because they're more detailed, and I'll hold them until the follow-up's been done, and hope that I don't even need to ask them at that point. So if everyone's content, I'll move us on to agenda item 6. Which is the Montgomery Canal Restoration Project report. And I'll go to Ian. I'll go to Ian for that, and then Louise and Daniel are here to support our consideration of this. But I'll go to Ian first to offer a brief introduction to the audit and the context and the findings.
Thank you, Chair. The report is on page 84 of the large agenda pack. We undertook a piece of work on Montgomery Canal Restoration Project. We undertook the review mid-term, actually. You find with a lot of audits, we come along at the end, and when it's too late, and so we decided this time we were going to go in mid-term. So we went in between the half and the 3/4 point with the aim delivery. The project itself was based on funding secured from UK government from the Levelling Up Fund of 13.9 million, and it was to revitalise a disused section of the Montgomery Canal. The council partnered with the Canal and River Trust to deliver parts of the project, but they did deliver some themselves. In terms of the positive aspects of the review, we found that the project team had suitable skills from previous projects and experience to be able to deliver the project. We found that there was effective project administration, and we found that there was effective governance frameworks in place. We also identified that there was a risk management process in place, which was highlighting the key risks and identifying mitigation actions. However, as part of the review, we identified areas where the project was not meeting its intended goals. Firstly, that was around some of the unforeseen and external factors that meant that the project was unlikely to be delivered on time within the agreed timescale. And that timescale was set by the UK government. It was a grant condition, which is March 25. I think we acknowledged that there was flex built into the original proposal, but in hindsight, it was likely that those original intentions were maybe overambitious, and given and perhaps some of the external factors were not recognised, in terms of the drift that it may cause some of the projects. So there could have been a greater building in of contingencies in there. The other part is around the fact that I think there is the diligence at the start of the project was probably somewhat stretched. And this was as a result of the very short call-off time that UK government give on this type of project. So our report suggested that if the council could go to some kind of pre-prepared list of projects that they would have in the future, where they would undertake the initial diligence and make sure that the project plan is realistic. So they would be almost oven-ready projects, so to speak. The second area is around the delivery and drift itself. So we've said there was some drift caused by many factors. The project will be underspent, and this causes significant uncertainty over what happens next. And I think, there are potentially three options. One of those is obviously the rollover of the remaining funds, but this is uncertain given the change in the UK government. The one is that it's funded from other sources, and obviously Powys County Council are one of those sources. And then finally, it's that the project is halted as a part finished project, but of course there'll be some kind of reputational damage in that. So I think the audit really was keen to make sure that for the non-delivery or the drifting delivery, that the council were very aware of what this meant to the council, and that there was information that would pass to key stakeholders in the council and the cabinet and members to make sure that we are very aware of what the next stages mean and look like, so that we can make well-informed decisions. Much of the delivery was transferred to a partner, but I think the council ultimately are responsible financially and reputationally for the delivery. So it's important that we understand those issues and those uncertainties. I'm happy to end it there, Council Chair, and let the service make a response.
Thank you very much, Ian. I just wondered if Councillor David Selby wanted to say anything before I go to officers, or are you happy for the officers to respond?
I'm happy for the officers to respond at this stage.
Thank you very much, Councillor David. Thank you.
Conclusion.
But thanks very much. Louise, Daniel, over to you to respond and give us a bit more of an understanding as to what you're dealing with and what the issues are for you.
Okay, thanks, Louise. If you wouldn't mind just stepping in with the update.
Sorry, Dan, did you want to step in?
No, I was saying, sorry, please, you go first, Louise.
Okay, no problem. So we're doing everything we can in order to mitigate any issues and to speed up any construction, etc. within the project. We are, as Ian alluded to, everything is being monitored through our programme board, and timescales and costings are being updated as we go through the period. We're in the position at the moment that we do need to apply for a project adjustment request through UK government. With a project adjustment request, it is something you can only do once in the lifetime of a project, so it has to be done at a really critical point, and we need to ensure that we have all of the information, and part of that, the requirement from UK government, is that we have very accurate costings and reviewed timescales going forward to prepare for that. We also need to provide them with justification as to why we are where we are, and also we need to evidence that we have tried every avenue possible in order to try and deliver the project on time, and like Ian said, that can be utilising match funding outside of the programme period. So we have exhausted all arenas for that, and it does bring us back to, we do require a 6-month extension to the project in order to complete. We are going to request a 9-month extension to allow some contingency within that. We're just at the stage now, because of the announcement of the general election, a hold was put on the power process, so that was back in July. The hold is still in place until after the autumn budget, so that is going to take us into November.
but we have had conversations with UK government. We have really good relationships with them. And we have been encouraged to approach the commercial team and to outline the situation and the impact and the risk that we have here if we don't get that extension. So we will do that, and we are in a position that we have all of the information required for that PAR process, even though it is on hold. It's worth mentioning as well that we don't get the forms shared with us until we are invited by UK government to apply for a PAR. So we are doing this from information that we have received from other local authorities who have also actually received an extension to their project. We're aware of a neighbouring authority that received a 9-month extension just prior to the announcement for the general election. So it does happen. We're aware that there's another local authority in West Wales that has had a PAR request in since July, but it's on hold. So we're not the only authority that is in this position. So we are going to continue to speak to UK government to request that we receive this extension. And we are working also with an organisation called ARUP that were brought in by UK government to support local authorities in the delivery and dealing with any issues in delivery of these projects. They helped the neighbouring authority to put in an approved PAR request. So we are quite confident that we would be able to put one in of a similar quality as well. So we are hopeful, but it's very much down to what UK government's stance is going forward following the autumn budget, whether they will allow any funding to be carried over into the next financial year. I think that's it really from me, unless there's any other questions.
Thank you very much. So I'm assuming on the basis of what you've said and what's on page 91 of the report that the council is currently holding the funds.
We have drawn down some of the funds through the freedoms and flexibilities process that you're allowed to do via UK government. So we are holding money, but that is to be utilised on capital projects within the local authority. And then we would then hold that money in the capital budget to draw down for the project as and when we need it. But I'm assuming that if UK government decides that they will not give us an extension, then any money that hasn't been spent on the project by the 31st of March would need to be returned to UK government.
Yeah. So when it says funding received, has it been received or is it drawn down on a delivery basis?
It's been received, so it's partially on a delivery basis. So what we're able to do is we're able to draw down the forecasted budgets, but we do report on the actual expenditure against that. So we are also drawing down the balance between what we've spent and what we forecast to spend at that point in time.
And it's around about £6 million underspend at the moment.
It would be if we weren't able to get that extension going forward. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for just clarifying those points. I'll invite questions or comments from committee members, please. Councillor Breeze, Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This report is extremely alarming. I appreciate some of the issues that may have caused some of the delay here, but what really has concerned me is that the first I heard that there was a delay of this type and a loss of the income possible was that I read it in the newspapers, and that really annoys me. If we hadn't got this audit report in front of us today, would any of us have known? When would we have known? And I'm alarmed by that. I appreciate that the papers arrived to me the same day as they probably arrived to the press, but they moved a little bit quicker than I did. I've been right at the centre of this project from day one as a councillor in Wellspool and very supportive of it. The reputational damage that this could cause to this council if we fail to deliver this project is absolutely enormous and totally indefensible, I'm afraid. And I would like to ask the portfolio holder who's present today why he hasn't brought this matter to the attention of the council previously so that it can be discussed openly and that all councillors were aware of the situation before auditors have picked this up. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Graham. Councillor David, could you respond to Councillor Graham, please?
Graham, thanks for the question. I mean,
Thank you.
why hadn't I? I mean, the process of the project has been the same as any within the council, where the appropriate reporting is done at the appropriate time. Also, we couldn't have had discussed an audit report before we received it either. We have faced, and it's not an embarrassment, but just a concern that to face both a general election and a change in government, when the two funders are examining ways forward, has caused us many great problems. I'm confident, though, that we know the way out of this, and as long as the PAR process can be speedily resolved at a government level, then we're ready to get on. You will know as well, Graham, that there are contractors on site in Welshpool working on elements of the project now as we speak. Nearer Newtown, the aqueduct works are being conducted. It's not that nothing is happening. There's an awful lot of work going on.
Can I just come back, Chair?
Yes, Councillor Graham.
I fully accept what you're saying, David. What I can't accept is that you haven't come to council with concerns that you could share with other councillors that this project is at risk. And I leave it there.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor David, and thank you very much, Councillor Graham. I'm going to bring in John, and then I'll go back to Louise. If you can sort of collect your thoughts on the various questions and then come in with various answers. I'll go to John.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, if the PAR is granted, will the project, you say the project will be completed in 6 months or possibly 9, would it be completed to the same scope or to a reduced scope? And if it is a reduced scope, what are we going to lose out on?
Thanks, John. I'll go back to Louise then to address Councillor Graham and John's questions, please. Thank you.
Okay, if I just address the reporting process to start with. So as I say, we have our project board, but we also have our programme delivery board, so the Supporting Communities Board, which we report into on this project. And that then also goes up to the Transformation Delivery Board, so CLT and Cabinet. So there are reports going through the system and giving updates on where this project is. So those should have been shared throughout. We also, we have obviously got the risks on the JCAD system as well. So that highlights the issues that we have in terms of that reporting. And as part of the PAR process, we would be required to get approval from Cabinet to put that PAR in, because in July 22 we had delegated authority from Cabinet for our project board to make all decisions on this project, but as long as they are within the approved funding programme. So anything outside of that obviously has to go back to Cabinet. So we would be in a position when we come to submit that PAR that would need to be approved by Cabinet first and foremost. So that's the answer for that question. In terms of what we would complete with an extension, we aim to complete everything to the same standard that we would have done from the outset. There is one item that we were looking to de-scope from the programme, and that is one of the nature reserves, and that is due to budget issues. So we would look to reduce from 3 nature reserves down to 2, but that possibility was written into the application to UK government in the very beginning, that might be the case, and that is because the bridges have come in over budget, so we've obviously have to balance the books. So that one of those nature reserves is going to be de-scoped in order to be able to complete both bridges. Those 3 nature reserves are being brought in to mitigate future boat movement on the canal, but that boat movement isn't really going to start to increase or take place until up to 10 years time, so it's going to be very slow. So those nature reserves are there to mitigate that usage, and we're doing it now in order to get those nature reserves developed and matured in time for that boat movement. I'm not sure if that answers the questions.
Thank you very much. John, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Can I make a suggestion, Chair? I really think this issue now needs to be incorporated in our corporate risk register so that we can keep an eye on it.
I will ask Bets to take that away and to ensure that she discusses it with the relevant senior officers and with CLT. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Well, the question I have, which is related to risk, the programme of work and the project delivery, so it was a 4-year funding profile finishing in 24-25. So the programme of work has been ongoing for about 3.5 years. Is that about right?
I would say it's less than that, because if you look at it, we put in a report that was circulated with the papers that outlined some of the delays, and there were significant delays at the start of the project. So
but at the start. So when did it start?
So the SLA between ourselves and Canal and River Trust was actually signed off on the 18th of August 22. So really that's only when staff were started to be brought in by Canal and River Trust to deliver this project. So that was the real start date, August 22.
Okay, so that's still 2 years.
Yes.
I suppose the question I would have, and if officers, if this does make its way to the strategic risk register, or one of the questions that I would have is, if the project has been ongoing for 2 years and has had a prior phase, what has changed in terms of governance and delivery infrastructure to increase your confidence that it is now possible to, subject to government agreeing the extension, that it is now possible to deliver this programme of work within the next 6 to 9 months, given that thus far the governance and programme delivery infrastructure has failed to deliver? What has changed, or what will change to significantly increase your delivery confidence? And from my perspective, good governance is key to delivery confidence.
No, absolutely. So we are being extra stringent on the monitoring, and we're reviewing the timescales on which are changing, on a monthly basis, to make sure that they are accurate. We're also talking to internal departments, so we have a meeting internally with planning, with our ecologists, with highways, so that we are troubleshooting in advance for anything that we need to have in place in terms of when we come to the construction stages. So that's all being done ahead of time to cut back on the time that will take later, or any issues in getting things like planning through. So we are doing that. But we've also, I mentioned before that we're working with ARA up. They have also been brought in to sense check everything that we are doing in terms of quantity surveying, so those costings, the sense checking of that, but also the design work that we're doing with the bridges, etc. So they are also very closely working with us to check everything that we are doing.
And your escalation route would be to Transformation Board?
Yes, that would be to Transformation Board, and then ultimately to Cabinet in terms of we would need to, like I say, get approval for that PAR request to be submitted to UK Government when we're invited to do so.
So I think from Governance and Audit Committee's perspective, we would be encouraging the Cabinet and the Transformation Board to be really, really picking the tyres to seek assurance about good governance and robust delivery, and picking up some of Ian's earlier comments, the risk of optimism bias and the lack of contingency. We would expect those things to be taken into account. I've hogged this for far too long. I'm going to go to Councillor Pete and then I'm going to go to Councillor Bev.
Thank you, Chair. I was just looking on page 88 under section 3.2 in the comment on the risk management, which sort of sounded quite damning for me. The bit I was sort of focusing on is it says, and I just quote for a moment, "It is probable that the limited time allowed by the UK government to prepare for bids may have resulted in the project not truly understanding the risks encountered and how these would impact on the overall delivery." And I think the worry for me is that not only impacts this project, but it would impact other projects. I don't know how, hand on heart, we could actually enter into a project without fully understanding it. And I guess the important point for me is what have we learnt to make sure that for future projects we wouldn't be in that position again.
Thanks, thanks, Pete. I'm going to ask Councillor Bev to make her questions as well, and then I'll ask you to answer them as a bundle, Louise. Councillor Bev.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, mine was more back to what was said originally with the sort of 1, 2 or 3. So we've either got the perspective of a rollover, so the extension, Paris pay the funds, which I can't see is that, so that's a non-starter, or we end up with a half-finished project. So I mean, I'm a bit confused actually of where we've been till now. It's more of a comment really than a question. Then I'm just confused as to where we've been till now. And realistically, we can't really blame the changing government of the fact that we don't roll the funds over. At the end of the day, we haven't delivered a project that we have promised to deliver. So we need to just go back and look at what went wrong so we don't end up in this situation again. And I'm a bit concerned that it's taken till this stage to now, after, gosh, it was in the previous administration that the funding was agreed. I appreciate Louise said that it wasn't signed off until the autumn of 22, but you know, that is an awfully long time. So it's more of a comment really than a question, but I'm just concerned of why we've got to this point where we've not picked it up sooner. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bev, and my sense is that your comments echo and reinforce Councillor Graham's earlier comments about governance and communication as well. So Louise, I'm going to make this the last word on this. Louise, if you could seek to address Councillor Pete's comments, not so much Councillor Bev's, because I think Councillor Bev was making a statement as opposed to asking a specific question. But if you could answer Councillor Pete's question, and then I think we'll move on.
Sorry, can I just ask Councillor Pete, can you just highlight that again? I've been listening to Councillor Bainham and it's sort of kind of got out of my head a little bit. So can you just remind me of the key point that you were looking for? Sorry.
Yeah, it's on page 88 of the pack, section 3.2. And really it was around the comment there that said the project may not have truly understood the risk encountered and how these would impact on the overall delivery. So my concern there was I guess twofold. Was how could we enter into a project without fully understanding all of those and flagging up all the risks, for example. And then more importantly, what have we learned from that to stop that sort of situation arising again on future projects?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think it was a short window for application. There was a 3-month window to get that application together. There had been, I think, long-term discussions ongoing with the local authority and the Canal and River Trust regarding the Montgomery Canal and proposed works that they would have liked to have seen there. So I think it's a project that has been on the back burner for a long time. So obviously they put that application together on information and data that they had at the time, and it was very much a concept kind of design in terms of those bridges, etc. So the costings were based on that as well. So a lot of time has lapsed since then, and obviously they've started to do design work and investigation work in line with that construction, which has brought up issues, which is there's been all sorts of things which have brought in cost increases and changes to the works, which again have added to the time scale. So there's a multitude of reasons why the project is delayed. But I take it on board, and it's come through on this audit from SWAP that we do need to have more preparation going forward for these projects. And I think it's getting more and more regular now where these opportunities for major funding like this have been given to us, but at very short notice. So we really do need to have some on the shelf projects ready, developed, but also with from the risk side, obviously as part of the application process, we had to complete a risk register. So, you know, we included any risks that we were aware of that time. But, you know, risks have changed since then. More risks have arisen as things have progressed, and some risks have turned into issues. But and that's being regularly monitored, and we report on the risks and the issues at our project board meetings. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Chair, I wonder, could I just make a very quick intervention just to...
Yes, of course, Councillor David, yes.
2 things. One, and Louise made it at the end of her comments then, this type of project is a bespoke project by its very nature. There isn't another example of something done like this on Montgomery Canal. And I think that emphasises the point made by Audit, that to have shovel-ready, oven-ready projects which have been gone through the initial work seems to me a sensible way forward. And the other point is, and you can take this, I hope you take it as a positive, is that I've joined the project board now. It's important that this project gets completed for the benefit of the residents of Montgomeryshire area, and I've got to do my best to help achieve that.
Thank you very much, Councillor David. Councillor Pete, I don't really want to prolong this agenda item much more.
No, if I may, just 30 seconds, Chair.
30 seconds.
Yeah. No, I just want to thank Louise and David for those comments there. Pleased to see that going forwards we've got some learning that's coming out of it. And I guess the main bit here is we just picking up a bit on Councillor David's comments there. We do need to get this balance right between this short window for applying for funding and getting on and doing things for the residents, but understanding all the risks that go with it, whilst not wanting to get bogged down in bureaucracy. So I know there's a big overall picture there, but we do need to get that balance right and not rush in without fully understanding things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, and thanks especially to Louise, because we've and Councillor David, because we've given you some tough questions, but you've answered them as professionally as you possibly can. So we are very, very grateful for your attendance and for your candour and the way you've answered the questions. So thank you very much. I suspect that the Governance and Audit Committee will probably want to seek further assurance about this programme of work once it's known whether the roll forward has been approved by the UK government or not, but we'll come to that in due course. Thanks very much. I'm going to move the meeting on, if I may, colleagues, to Nina, I'm just going to take agenda 7 and 8. I'm just going to roll them together, as it were. And if you could introduce the Corporate Safeguarding Board activity reports, just very briefly drawing our attention to anything specific that you would wish to, and then I'll open it to colleagues to ask any questions that they wish to. Nina, yours.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the committee today has got 2 of the activity updates from Corporate Safeguarding Board for information and assurance. The only thing I'll pick up from in the minutes, I'll take the reports as read, but I think it's important to note that the review of the progress against the actions in the Safeguarding Regulatory Tracker, and the board made the decision to close 2 of those. So I think they're probably the key kind of points in the reports to look at. And if I could just add just one thing that's not been provided in the reports is, and that's over the summer, we've had a follow-up inspection from Audit Wales. You as a committee will be aware that there was an inspection and a report December 2022, and Audit Wales came back over the summer to do a follow-up inspection. We are expecting that report by the end of October, to be published by the end of October. So I've provisionally penciled it down to be brought to yourselves for your November meeting. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, as obviously that'll be an item for you to consider very shortly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Nina. Excellent introduction. Open the floor to colleagues for any questions. No questions, Nina?
I'm sure we'll have a good discussion when we come back
in
with
November,
the audit.
once
Yes.
we've got the refreshed stuff. That will be very, very welcome. So thanks very much, Nina, for your papers and for your introduction. We'll look forward to seeing you again and have a more detailed discussion in November. Yeah.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'll move the meeting on to agenda item 9, if I may, and Helen is with us. And this item is a follow-on from our previous discussions of the information management assurance and governance reports that we've received. And Helen has kindly prepared a briefing pack to help us understand better how the whole thing works. I think that's the purpose. Helen, if you could introduce your paper and lead us through the slides, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. I'll just share my screen so you see the presentation coming up for you.
Thanks, Helen.
That should be coming up now.
I think so. Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I've just lost my documents. Sorry. The computer's just decided it wants to play up. Okay, so the Governance and Audit Committee, as you indicated, Chair, wanted some more detail on the Council's Information Management Assurance and Governance Plan following a presentation of the last Information Governance Annual Report earlier on in the year. So this report is, this presentation is a briefing to enable further understanding of the plan, how it works in Powys, why we've even developed it, etc. So I'm Helen Dolman, and I'm the Senior Manager for Customer Services and Information Governance. So information governance comes under my umbrella of work, and has done since the Council first implemented information governance into the Council back in 2011. Back in 2011, many years ago, the Council was served with both a monetary penalty notice from the Information Commissioner's Office of £130,000, and also an enforcement order in relation to training, which is now we know it as our cybersecurity and GDPR training, but it was an enforcement order in relation to training all staff as well. And those required that we as a council did more to understand our information governance frameworks, our responsibilities and our obligations, and to develop plans of work and activity to bring together all elements of information governance, which includes information compliance with information legislation, the management of our information, the integrity of our information, the availability of our information, so it requires close ties to our IT departments, etc. So it pulls together many strands in how the council collects, stores, manages and uses its information. The council, as part of this work to start this work off, the council established information governance groups. The main group being the Corporate Information Governance Group, SIG. And this group is chaired by the Council's Senior Information Risk Owner, who is our Head of Legal and Monitoring Officer, who has delegated responsibilities for information risk within the Council. The corporate group is attended by the directors of the organisation, so that any work in relation to our IG planning, our frameworks, our issues, identified risks, etc., are overseen by that corporate group. The other group is the operational group, which is chaired by myself and is attended by representatives of the service areas, so that there is a conduit between the corporate element of the organisation and the services themselves, with information and work being laid down by the corporate group through the plan, which would then be undertaken by the operational group and people involved in that. So you can see that the plans and the framework to our governance of those plans and our work is all about ensuring that try and ensure that we can give some assurances as to both public and council as to how we use all of our information, not just their personal information, but all council information, and so that we can ensure that we can meet our obligations under different pieces of information legislation. The current information management and governance plan, not a flan, sorry, we usually run on a two-year plan, and so every 2 years we consider what needs to be pulled into the plan, what what's been completed, and what's been completed may then need to go into our ongoing pieces of work. The plan or activities or elements of the plan are built into different strands of work, such as governance, training and awareness, information risk, information management, compliance with information legislation. And through those headings, we then have broken down activities into those elements which we believe are essential to the organisation. So something that is essentially something that is required by law, or to ensure our ongoing compliance. Something which is recommended, which we feel would be good practice, is recommended through good practice of the Information Commissioner or other commissioners. We also undertake work in relation to the Surveillance Commissioner in relation to CCTV usage, etc. Those elements which are desirable, which we believe would assist the organisation and improve our framework and our IG maturity. And those elements which are ongoing activities which have to be perhaps repeated on an annual basis, such as the IG report, annual IG report, the annual RIPA reports, or we would need to review certain elements periodically, such as the Freedom of Information Publication Scheme, or activities which are repeated on a day-to-day piece of work, such as our measurements and our stats and our key performance indicators. Each element is assigned a risk rating so that we know and understand the risk that non-implementation or delays could mean to the council, and it helps us to prioritise the pieces of work. You'll appreciate that there are many pieces of work and we're trying to pull strands together, so this helps us understand which are our priority pieces of work. And sometimes we may need to change those priorities dependent on what's happened. Perhaps there's been some work of the Information Commissioner where they've cited reprimands for other local authorities, which we think, oh, if we don't implement that, that could impact on us. We have the similar risks. So sometimes we need to change our risk ratings dependent on what we're seeing, not just within Powys, but outside of the organisation as well. We also have identified within the plan where elements are dependent on one another. So this helps us understand just how big some elements may be without losing sight of all the different strands of a piece of work. So currently there's 40 elements to the plan, and it runs to the end of March 2025. But you see that many of the elements will link with one another. As I said, these elements are based on our legal obligations, standards of good practice that come out from the Information Commissioner and other regulators, and finding from breach investigations. The plan is approved by the Corporate Information Governance Group, and they receive quarterly updates at the quarterly SIG meetings, where the plan is discussed, considered, where issues arising are discussed with the group, and consideration is given as to the revision of priorities and risks. SIG provide approval or not approval for any timescale changes required, or any elements to be new elements to be included or elements to be deleted. And elements are assigned owners to take activities forward. These owners are quite limited normally in terms of either being myself, the Assistant Data Protection Officer, or the Information Compliance Manager within the Information Governance team. And then we will try and include then other officers, the Cybersecurity Manager, and officers from the service to assist in the development of these activities. The 23-25 plan was developed, and due to some resourcing issues, which we discussed when we were discussing the annual IG report, then some activities had to be revised. The timescales had to be revised due to the pressures within the team and the staffing levels within the information compliance team. Those elements which we felt could push on will be assigned to the 25-27 plan. However, they still remain on the 23-25 plan because work is still ongoing on them, and it allows us to report that work back into the Corporate Information Governance Group. So just because activity has been moved on, will be moved to the 25-27 plan, doesn't mean to say it's not being done. It's just we're not expecting to now fully implement until a later date. Okay, so we've now got some boxes. So as of September 2024, and I met with the Corporate Information Governance Group last week. So where some of the elements were agreed that could be approved to be closed. So this is a revised pack from last week. 19 elements have been completed. 20 are still on track for completion, and 1 is slightly behind schedule. you see that these are split down into their essential, recommended, desirable, and ongoing elements. Blue, completed; green, still in timescale; and the amber is the one that's just behind schedule. The essential, we have 3 high completed, 1 medium completed, and 3 high still outstanding. And you can see then the ongoing elements. There are many more ongoing elements than there are other elements to the plan, and many more of those are completed. Those are regular pieces of work that we have to revisit: training, awareness, etc. So the next few slides will just give you an idea of some of the elements to the plan, some examples of the elements to the plan. So the first is essential. So those elements which we feel are essential to the council's IG framework. So an information request regimes policy for the public. That's in the middle of, currently in the process of development and out for consultation. And that's a policy explaining to the public their rights in relation to obtaining information from the council and the complaints process around that. The development of the Information Governance Hub. This is a resource for both council staff and schools, because we deliver a data protection officer and IG service to schools as well as the council within the team. So this is a resource for all of those, for information, templates, policy documents, frequently asked questions, advice, etc. And it's hoped that through its use, and we will be considering, you know, the use of the analytics within the hub to identify how many pages are being delivered, are being visited, etc. We're hoping that that will take off some resource or take some pressure off the team in terms of simple questions, leaving them staff available to answer the more complex questions. Development of a surveillance camera policy. CCTV policy, there used to be, but obviously surveillance cameras have changed over time. We've now got body-worn cameras, etc. So we wanted to develop a policy that allows us to be clear about what needs to happen before the services implement CCTVs, and schools are looking to use that policy as a template policy. We're in the process of putting it into a template for them so that they can utilize a similar policy themselves. Review of the corporate information classification scheme. That is a requirement of freedom of information legislation, where we are able to, sorry, that's publication schemes. Classification scheme is how we classify all our information. We have, as a local authority, millions of documents and pieces of information in SharePoint files, OneDrives, etc. So it's important to now start understanding where all this electronic information is. Manual information is far easier to see. You see it in a filing cabinet, you see it in offices. Electronic information is hidden by its very nature. So it's important that we start classifying and understanding what information we have. Our current classification scheme is was drafted many years ago, so it's quite a large piece of work to now bring that up to normal current standards. From that, we will then look at the development of our information asset register work. We undertook this in 2018 to bring us into line ready for GDPR, the implementation of GDPR. Resources at that time were quite limited. It was quite a large piece of work to get us ready for GDPR. So it's about revisiting those registers that were developed and developing new registers and maintenance plans. And these the last two pieces of work are the work of the information, the management of electronic information officer, who also sits in the information compliance team, but who works very closely with the information management service. And reviews postal check-in regimes. So when I spoke earlier about the enforcement order that we had from the Information Commissioner back in 2011, one of the issues that they'd highlighted with in relation to those breaches that had occurred was the lack of postal checking regimes. Those were implemented immediately in that service and have been implemented in other services subsequently, as perhaps other breaches may have occurred. But it was important to consider, are they still doing those checks? Are they still doing what they need to be doing? So we undertook a review of the postal checking regime last year, and we've shared the good practice with all the different services. We've identified some services had better practices than others, so we've shared that and improved the services out there. And we will now then revisit that in 3 years' time. So that will move now to our ongoing piece of work, because it's a piece of work that's now been completed. Recommended elements. Some of these are around information risk identification, mitigation policies and process. So Bets, as our risk officer, has been involved in some of those conversations. Those are things that we need to start understanding. As we understand where our information is, we need to start understanding the risks it presents, or risks to it. A new breaches workflow reporting system. We have a robust way of managing our breaches, our personal data breaches and information security incidents, but a new system would help us to be able to analyze the information much easier than currently. The information request workflow app is a piece of work that we've been working on for a couple of years. Phases 1 and 2 have now been completed, and we're in the process of building the business case for phase 3. That is hoped to improve information disclosed to the public and improve our publication of information, but it also improve our provision of information to service managers and to enable them to have a greater understanding of the requests that are coming in for their services. We're doing some work as well on our accountability assessment. Data protection legislation requires that we comply with 6 principles of the GDPR and processing personal data. The 7th principle is the accountability assessment, the accountability principle, making sure that we as an organisation are able to evidence our compliance with that accountability assessment, accountability principle. And this assessment is a product of the Information Commissioner's Office, which gives us a visual as to where we're currently standing. So it's to try and attempt to bring that into being and to align it with the information management plan, rather than having 2 pieces of work running together. A review our information retention schedule, basically to understand how long we need to be keeping pieces of information. Desirable is sector-specific information governance training. That could be from the basis of a breach or the service area requesting something specific, normally from the information compliance team. Currently, we're running the identification of personal data and redaction training courses for some areas of the council who are required to undertake redaction on documents before publication, such as our HR team and our planning department. The Regulation Investigatory Powers Act policy publication. I'm required as the RIPA coordinator to reconsider the policy every year and put that in front of members. And another piece of an element that is required, or it was considered would be desirable, is a piece of guidance in relation to members accessing information. So that's a piece of work. And then our ongoing, you can see the amber element is the revision of the terms of reference for the governance groups. These are reviewed regularly and I'm behind on the revision of the terms of reference for the operational group. You see the development of guidance and awareness material, the publication scheme, which is required under freedom of information legislation, and that tells the public where they can find certain information. And what we'd be looking to do eventually is, where we make freedom of information disclosures, is put those onto this publication scheme so people can see what has previously been released. That's part of our work with the app. Maintenance and central records of information sharing protocols. The sharing of personal information is critical to a local authority this size, but different services have different purposes for the sharing of information, so we need to ensure that sharing is safe and secure and legal. And then it's the provision of our relevant policies, management, measurement data, our KPIs, the annual reports, the RIPA, the schools IG and the council IG report, and the maintaining of a data protection fees register. The council is required to pay a fee to the information commissioner, but different elements of the council are also standalone and they are required to pay those fees as well. And so it's important that we understand who's due to pay what at what time, and especially for schools as well, because each school is required to pay their own fee. So those are just some of the elements and examples of the elements that are currently within our plan, that we're trying to pull all the little bits, knit them together, and to build a strong IG framework. So as I said previously, the plan and the activities of the plan link together and may respond to more than one requirement of legislation or standards of good practice. But I've attempted to give you an idea of which pieces of legislation we're attempting to comply with and why we're implementing some of these activities. So data protection provides, you appreciate, provides an awful lot of our obligations, because so much of the information that we process is personal data, not just of our customers, but also of our staff as well. So one obligation is to have appropriate technical and organizational security in place. Well, we have a cyber security team who deal with our electronics, but some of this, and that's our technical security, but organizational security would be things like training, our breach investigations and analysis, understanding our information as well. So meeting that obligation, we would pull many threads and pull many of the activities together and to be able to demonstrate that we meet that principle. The law requires that we undertake data protection impact assessments where the processing of personal data might result in high risks to the individual. Therefore, we've got pieces of work around that too. We comply with the principles of processing through our the accountability principles. So you can see the elements of the plan, such as the information, the IG annual report, the corporate governance, the processing agreements, etc., that we all bring together and to meet that obligation. And then the obligation of meeting subject access request compliance rates. We would indicate that the app helps the measurements so that we can see how well we're doing, and the training and awareness that we give to both the team, the information compliance team, and wider service areas. Freedom of information gives us some obligations as well. So the information request compliance rates. So you see the same, the app, the training, the measurements. To have in place a publication scheme. We have the publication scheme in place, but it's important to keep it now reviewed and up to date. Therefore, it's part of our ongoing pieces of work. Freedom of information legislation requires that we manage our information properly so that it can be found in order to respond to freedom of information requests. So that brings into being all our management of information elements of work as well. RIPA, or the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, while seen as slightly outside of IG practices, it's very closely linked into data protection and the protection of personal data of an individual and protection of their privacy. So we've got the pieces of work around the policies, the annual reports as well. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. So thank you very much. I hope that the presentation has been useful.
Thank you, Helen. That I certainly benefited from that. That was really thorough and a really, really good walk through everything that you are doing and all of your the council's responsibilities and duties in this space. I'm going to just take Chair's prerogative, and the question I have really is it's around training and skills and capability. How easy is it for you to source a team through recruitment? Recruitment and retention issues is really what I'm thinking, to ensure that the capacity and capability of your team is how you would wish it to be to best support the council in this quite complex space.
Yeah, as you're aware, we had a few recruitment and retention issues year before last, and so recruitment had to take place and then had to take place again. The team currently is quite stable.
Good.
Many of the staff, the new staff, are still learning. Yes. But we're seeing improvements, and we're starting to see improvements in the compliance rates, the information request compliance rates. You'll appreciate that the three pieces of legislation to which they normally work are quite complex. Yes. So they can't be learned all in once. So it is a period of time before they can become more involved in some of this work as well, because it's not just an understanding of the legislation, it's an understanding of the organisation that's required as well. And how we do things, why we do things, and some of the statutory functions that we have. So it's bit by bit, time by time. But at the moment, things are stable. She says with crossing her fingers. Yes, things are stable at the moment. We'll just need to get to a level where we see how everybody's progressing. But yes.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Helen, and thank you very much. I can see Councillor Pete's got. Helen, can you pop the sharing off, and then we can.
Oh yes, sorry.
Yeah, Councillor Pete, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to build on your question actually, and and also sort of thank you, Helen. Echo the Chair's comments about a very useful and thorough presentation there. So thank you for that. It was really just a quick query around the resourcing capacity, because I think your slide on page 112 of the pack did highlight the resourcing capacity and how that's impacting you in terms of prioritising the workload. So the question for me, just I guess building upon the Chair's question, was are you comfortable that you do have the resource to meet all the legal obligations, the essential elements, and therefore reduce any risk to the council of any fines?
In terms of, do I have the right resources in place? I could suggest, I could always do with more resources to improve things. But at the moment, I have the staff that I have no vacancies in the team. And it's a case of the development of skills and knowledge, which will eventually make the staff faster at undertaking different pieces of work. Some of the resourcing issues which are referred to within the briefing were my own resourcing issues. I previously was just the information governance manager or the data protection officer. And then I've taken over customer services as well. So you'll appreciate my time is being very much split. And there's customer services work that we're trying to do as well. So I'm trying to bring on staff within the team, more experienced staff within the team, to be able to undertake some of the work that I was previously doing. So I think at this stage, it's a case of I just need to see how it balances out as staff's knowledge and skills develop.
Okay, thanks, Helen.
Thanks for the question, Pete, and thank you very much again, Helen. That was really, really instructive and very, very helpful.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. There are no other questions, so I'll move us on, but thanks, Helen. We are on item 10, which is the work programme. And I said in my opening remarks that we were just doing a bit of clarifying around October and November meetings, because all of the accounts, seminars and formal consideration of the accounts will be in November, not October. But I'll just pause and ask if there are any other points on the work programme that people want to ask about. Councillor Pete.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Could we just for the October and November one just add updates from the whistleblowing working group as well, please?
Yes. Yeah, we should just have working group update as a general single agenda item, and then that gives the opportunity for everyone to just provide updates as we go along. Thank you very much for that one. Any other points? No. Kath, if we could just decide on the balance of agenda items between October and November within the next week or so, because as I said earlier, it's only 3 weeks till the October scheduled meeting.
Will do, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kath, much appreciated. I'll move us on then to item 11, which is indeed an update from Councillor Pete on where we are with the whistleblowing working group to date.
Lovely, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just a short update for committee. So we held our latest meeting on the 18th of September, and at that meeting we agreed the details of the case studies that we would be undertaking. We also agreed that myself and Gemma Gabriel from HR would assess those case studies against the whistleblowing governance assurance framework, and then we hope for this piece of work to be completed and the results presented to the next working group meeting, which will be the end of October. And then if everything goes according to plan from there, we would like to be in a position to bring the results in the form of a report to the November meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Pete. Thanks. Does anyone have any questions for Pete? Anyone who's not on the committee? And no, well, thanks very much for that, Pete. And then item 12 is an update on the internal audit working group. Ian, can I ask you to help me out here? So we met last in August, and we hadn't, for a whole multitude of very understandable reasons, we hadn't actually had a formal meeting for a few months. So the August meeting was a bit of a stock take as to how the online live reporting, Ian, what's it called? Audit board, how effective that was proving, and how best to keep members informed of progress, particularly management action against recommendations. And Ian has been given some more thought to how we provide that sort of information to members in a clear and easily accessible form. And we were also talking about the future focus of the internal audit working group, which Ian, correct me if I'm wrong, but my sense is that we should be moving the internal audit working group to looking at particular reports where there are remaining challenges, or in particularly limited reports, so that the group can do more detailed examination where the committee wants to delegate to the working group where there are particular concerns around limited reports, kind of like what we did with the transport and highways ones. But Ian, from your perspective, the recent meeting in August.
Yeah, absolutely, Chair. I think you're spot on in terms of the role of the group and understanding how we deal with limited assurance reports, and making sure we've got a clear differentiation between what the audit committee do, what the working group do, and make sure we don't duplicate, but that where we need to go into more depth, we can go into depth in a slightly less formal forum.
Yeah.
So I think that was one of the things. In terms of the other key area was around action tracking and management tracking. I prepared a report that was sent to the management at Powys County Council, showing where we are in terms of the number of actions, number outstanding, and that's been sent across to the council. And what we've created, internal audit used to chase and update all actions in the past. What we've now rolled out is a process where the council have live access to those actions and can now update those on a live basis, which is very good, gives us a live picture. We rolled that out towards the end of August, and so far to date, I'm a little disappointed with the response. We're looking at a 10% response rate, so we're looking at just over 100 live actions at the moment. So less than 10% of those have had updates. The director of corporate services is very hot on this. She's the one that helped us roll it out. So I will go back to Jane and we will push again. The committee will see this report coming to them at the next meeting. So you will see what the position is in terms of the number of outstanding recommendations, the length that they've been outstanding. The other area that came up at the working group was around rollovers, where someone has asked for extensions. And so I think as a working group, we decided that there need to be more formalization around the ability to roll over, in that they don't get rolled over unless that's been agreed by the head of service. So we put that formalization into the rollover process. But you'll see all this at the next committee meeting.
Right.
So, and you will either have assurance or not, but you'll have the picture anyway.
Thanks very much, Ian. That's great. So that could be an item for the October meeting. Thank you. Excellent. No, thanks very much. And your final point is something that I feel quite strongly about, that officers shouldn't just have the discretion to roll forward an action just because they fancy doing it. That they really need some kind of management authority to do that. So thanks for reminding me of that. Any questions for myself or Ian on internal audit working group? If not, I will move us to item 13, which is requiring us to look at the motion to exclude the public so that we can move on to item 14, which is a confidential item. So moved by John. I'm looking for a seconder, and seconded by Councillor Pete. Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you very much to any members of the public who've been with us this morning, but we need to ask you to leave our meeting now. Kath, if you could now change the meeting so that we can go on to item 14.
Certainly, Chair.